Cheng, they're doubling down, saying they are the biggest victim in the death of Otto Warmbier, and also testing a new rocket engine. Let's bring in Dean Cheng, Senior Research Fellow for East Asia Studies at the Heritage Foundation. Nice to see you, sir.
Nice to see you.
Despite all of the tough words from the President, from the Secretary of State, from the Secretary of Defense, North Korea has yet to pay any real price since the Trump administration has come into power.
I'm afraid that's true, and that's in part because the geography of the region hasn't changed. At the end of the day, Seoul, the capital of South Korea, the largest city, is within artillery range of North Korea, and North Korea knows it. They've forward deployed much of their military to hold the capital of South Korea at risk. Acting against North Korea opens the possibility of turning the capital of South Korea into a butcher's.
So in other words, there are no options unless, of course, you listen to Dennis Rodman, who just got back from a visit to North Korea. Take a listen.
People don't see the good side about that country, but I think people don't see him as a friendly guy. But if you actually talk to him.
So when you see him, do you see a different guy?
Oh, yeah.
Does he smile? Does he does he talk? Is he open?
No, we always talk, right? We sing karaoke. It's all fun, ride horses.
Okay, so we all know that Dennis Rodman lives in an alternate reality to the rest of us. That's a given. This is bizarre.
Oh, yes. Well, I can only imagine what Kim Jong-un thinks of the United States as he chats with Dennis Rodman. I mean, he's got to be wondering sort of, who is this man and what is his relationship with the American government?
Well, that's a good question. The American government basically said, don't go, and you're certainly not a representative of us. Should the American government have prevented him from going?
I think when we take a look at the sad history of private diplomatic efforts with North Korea, they've generally proven disruptive. Jimmy Carter goes to North Korea and basically forced Bill Clinton's hand into the 1994 agreed framework by claiming to have grasped peace out of the jaws of war. When in fact what happened was he basically created the situation that eventually saw North Korea developing uranium enrichment and helped, I think, lead to where North Korea is today, working on a nuclear weapon that can reach the United States.
Clearly, the aim here is denuclearization of the North Koreans, and there is no direct talks between the United States and North Korea, but there are these indirect talks of former government officials. Two of those former government officials wrote a piece in the Washington Post. We'll put up the quote right now from this piece, and they had just been to Sweden with. Do we have the quote? There it is. Although President Trump has criticized President Barack Obama's strategic patience policy as weak and ineffectual, he has yet to distinguish his North Korea policy from his predecessors. Trump's policy of maximum pressure is anything but, as he continues to pull his punches against North Korea and Chinese violators of U.S. law. This goes a little bit to what you were saying before. Yeah, there's always a risk of retaliation, but we're a long way from exhausting the thumbscrews of telling Poland, among other countries, if you do business with North Korea or North Korean front companies, that's a decision not to do business with the United States. You tell the Chinese, you sell coal to North Korea, we don't buy your steel. Very simple. Or you buy coal, we don't buy your steel. Yeah. Why not?
That's a very good question. Actually, I work with one of the authors there, Bruce Cleaner, and Bruce is fond of pointing out that until very recently, we had more sanctions on Zimbabwe than we do on North Korea. So I would absolutely agree with Sumi Terry and Bruce. There are sanctions we should be putting on the Chinese, on our European allies. The South Korean president is apparently going to be pushing to renew trade ties with North Korea. We should make very clear to him that is not the actions of a good U.S. ally, never mind somebody who's under threat from North Korea.
Well, hold on. Let's think about that for a second, okay? They're next to the DMZ, as you pointed out, Seoul's in artillery range, and they're saying, oh, never mind, we don't think he's that big of a deal or big of a threat? I don't understand.
This is the truth in the saying that elections have consequences. The new president of South Korea has talked about in the past the possibility of reopening Kaesong, which is a joint economic venture, wanting to renew the so-called sunshine policy of more trade relations with North Korea. Many American analysts are saying that's a terrible idea.
So does this tie the hands of the Trump administration or not?
If that is the formal policy that the South Korean president pushes, it will absolutely create a horrible dilemma for us because we do need to work with South Korea on whatever policies we do pursue.
Well, whatever policies we pursue, we also have 30,000 or so U.S. troops there who, no matter what their policies are from the South Koreans, it's American lives who are going to end up defending them if this comes to war.
Absolutely. And if the South Korean president decides to pull back on the deployment of THAAD, that will place those American lives at risk.
Well, and THAAD was the thing that really sort of perhaps put a little bit of pause in the North Koreans' moves. Appreciate your insights, as always. Great to have you. Thanks so much. Liz?
A college professor under fire for saying Otto Warmbier, quote, got exactly what he deserved.